I'm loving big Ange instead. So just miles from his mic. You can see
I'm in front of my mic.
Right then.
How are you measuring that?
Same way I measure
your
most
penis
things.
length away from my microphone.
Yeah.
It's less than an inch. Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
It's Monday.
I can see that. Has it started raining yet? Because I don't feel like it stopped. So summer's gone. Summer, we can say, is finished. It finished yesterday.
Average. Saturday wasn't too bad.
Yeah, that's what I said. It finished yesterday.
Yeah, and then pissed it down with rain. I think we'll still see some heat coming through, but weekend is over, James. The weekend is over.
What a great FPL week that was for everyone.
I was just looking down at the games, and even just over the entire weekend, it was there wasn't a single game, looking back on it as a neutral, that I cared about.
All right, suit yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking back at it, and I was like, there wasn't a single game where I was like, oh, that seems exciting or interesting to me. They're all meh. Oh, Wolves, Liverpool, great. Villa Palace, great. Fulham, Luton, great. I don't think there wasn't a single game at the weekend that made me think, oh, I better watch that. Yeah, but that's not... I'm a neutral, mate. I'm saying as a neutral. Tell me, what other games were you excited by? Maybe Man United-Brighton was probably the only other game that I saw that was interesting. I saw a friend of mine I was chatting to yesterday was like, yeah, why was Wolves Liverpool over, say, West Ham, Man City picks for TV, or United Brighton? Obviously it's because the TV companies are trying to do each other over with their selections of what they're going to pick as fixtures and what have you.
It can be awkward on weeks. Like, they would have obviously had to propose this week in terms of fixtures before they knew what the European draw were and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it can make it a little bit awkward.
And there are weeks where they just want to get certain fixtures or teams televised so they can just put a tick against the box against something.
Exactly that. Nottingham Forest Burnley wasn't originally meant to be on the TV tonight.
But even Friday, right, or Saturday morning when I was having to make my transfers, I was so on the fence. Like I knew I wanted to get Spurs, and I also took the view that because we're only like imminently 3, 4, 5 weeks away from wildcard territory, just punt it, because you've got a good home fixture against Sheffield United, and the hope was that I'd get returns in that game enough that would justify owning them, and if I needed to bin anyone, I could bin them. Porro, and I could afford anyone, but Porro and Son were the two that I should have gone to, maybe based on the fact that they were maybe the most explosive, but I didn't want to go Porro because of the risk of rotation, which you'd mentioned, and then I decided to go Maddison over Son just because, again, let me clarify, I was full on buying Porro, by the way. Yeah, but Porro, I didn't want the headache of him being benched for Emerson, whereas Udogie I thought was just more nailed. So I thought I'd just go with Udogie. And then Maddison over Son was, if Richarlison came back in, Son would go out to the left, whereas Maddison's always going to play 10. So I was just like, it just seems simpler. Plus it gives me an extra bit of money in the bank for if I wanted to get a Liverpool attacking asset or something like that further down the road. It made my life easier to just go with the cheaper, and I didn't think it was particularly worth it. And in the end, it turns out that anybody that bought any Spurs asset, there might be 0.2% of people that actually picked the right one, but I don't even think it would be as high as that, possibly, maybe. No, a little bit like the miss with Chelsea in Gameweek 4. It was a big miss on Tottenham this week as well for most people. And again, I say this time last week, I said probably the less Chelsea you've got, probably the better week you've had, and it's probably turned out the less Tottenham you've got is probably the better week you've had. I mean, it feels like... Kinda. I don't think there's a big variance. It's been a shite week for the majority of people, and it feels like the only ones that have really proved difference for people is Alvarez, who you have, Suj, and Mo Salah. Otherwise, Salah did okay. For most people, but again, none of them went off, right? But if you look at Team of the Week, it's a joke. Yeah, it's crazy. He just put a line under. There's like only one player from the Team of the Week that would have like any ownership. Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting on 41 with Turner still to play. I play Turner over Onana. Yeah, I wouldn't be holding your breath on Turner points tonight if you're like me and Suj waiting on that. They were always a bonus. Take your 1 point now and... Whatever it is, as long as it's 2 or more, it's more than Onana. Yeah, I just said take your 1 point. No, thank you. I had Saliba, Saka, and Haaland captain, and then Julian Alvarez is the gift that keeps giving. So the difference with our week is I've got Saliba, Saka,
Haaland captain, I've got Ollie Watkins.
Instead of Julian Alvarez.
That's where the 4-point difference is, basically, right? There's a few small variations in our teams and stuff like that. But, yeah, a bit of a cluster this week. And interestingly, it just feels like suddenly problems are on the rise. And I think for both of us, and they're worth covering, the first is we've both got a Ben Chilwell problem now. That is a big problem.
What, him getting dropped?
It's not just that he's getting dropped. It's based on what Pochettino said about, I don't really want my fullbacks going forward and stuff, which is bizarre, right? I watched Pochettino's Tottenham, obviously, with Cole Walker and Danny Rose. Like, I don't know what that's all about, and it's very much against what Chelsea were trying to do in pre-season, where there was a real bomb-on effect, particularly on the left-hand side, on Chilwell's side, from left-back, and now there seems a massive reluctance to play him at left-back. And now he's, in competition with others for the left wing position. That's not great.
Yeah, but you just play a Stupinan. Like, if this week I had to bench Chilwell and play a Stupinan, I'll just do that.
You're playing a Stupinan this week anyway.
Yeah,
You're now going to play Udogie at Arsenal.
I've got Udogie, Saliba and a Stupinan. Like, it's not a major problem. Ben Chilwell, for me, is not a major problem.
It's a problem now. Gabriel Martinelli is a problem for both of us now as well.
That's a problem that we don't know the prognosis of, but obviously he did come off.
Well, certainly for me anyway, was the biggest differential I had going into this week. So he has a goal disallowed.
In 5 minutes, he turns from good to bad.
Which, by the way, can we instantly drop this narrative of, that camera angle's a bit dodgy and stuff? Like, if they've got the lines out and it's offside, it's offside. It's like, seriously, what? I'm sorry, Mr. Neville, I find it absolutely bizarre. You go, wrong angle. Oh, it's a bit dodgy, that. Did the same after Garnacho's disallowed goal against Arsenal. Well, no, the lines are the lines, right? Whatever. As much as I disagree with VAR, etc., that's factual as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, he scores. It's disallowed by millimetres. And then he's got injured in the same moment as well, doing it. So, look, there'll be information to find this week in terms of, obviously, if he plays in the Champions League on Wednesday and stuff. So we'll get an update this week rather than have to wait till the weekend for it. But you'd think tight hamstring, either way, they're going to go cautious for him, surely.
Yeah, but like me, though, you've got Pedro sitting there on the bench as well. So both of them, like if you'd found out, for example, that Martinelli was just 1 week, and you could fix the Ben Chilwell problem, for example. But Ben Chilwell, for me, obviously I'd rather move him on than not. But I'm playing first 11 week by week rather than the whole 15 squad because I'm wildcard soon. So if Ben Chilwell is a problem I can fix on wildcard, then I'm not going to waste the transfer in between now and then.
Some of us don't want to be using this wildcard anytime soon.
No. I actually have no idea when I'm going to use my wildcard. The only reason I'm talking about Gameweek 8 and 9 is obviously when fixtures turn for some clubs, but I've not even actually looked at it in detail. Like Martinelli to a Liverpool player is quite straightforward for me.
Yeah, which one?
Or I've got enough money. I'd probably go Diaz. I know he didn't start, but I'd probably like the look of Luis Diaz. Or I'm thinking Nunez. I quite fancy a bit of Nunez. This Julian Alvarez.
In for what?
Thing,
Pedro? Alvarez?
Alvarez.
Well, you think they're selling him?
Soon. Not before Forest.
I'm like, how am I getting there?
not before Forest. Well, this is the thing, right? Everybody's now thinking, we need to get to Julian Alvarez after he's played 90 minutes. And there's going to come a point where you're going to be like, oh, shit, he's going to get dropped. So,
But at the moment, why?
What?
You've got Grealish injured, and that's not really competitive.
What's the
with
prognosis
him
on
specifically?
him?
So we don't quite know at this stage. Kovacic obviously missed out the weekend. That's also no relevance to Alvarez at all. So at the moment, he's basically playing in his 10 position. What's really changed over the last couple of weeks, I think, so in a lot of people's eyes is it's not even just his positioning and the fact that just by that virtue alone, he's going to get returns for City. He's taking a lot of corners. He's taking direct free kicks. What an effort that was.
That was, yeah. If it had just a couple of inches, because Areola wasn't touching that. That was a great free kick. Like, he's in and about it all the time.
And if any reason Haaland did get a rest, which we've said several times over, is probably unlikely these days, then he ain't going to rest both of them anyway, is he?
No.
You'd make a case now, just close your eyes, Haaland, captain, Alvarez, vice, right? How mad unlucky would you be if neither of them played?
Yeah, they were looking good. Don't get me wrong.
So, I know what you're saying. City have obviously got a fixture turn coming around about Gameweek 8, but sometimes I just feel like maybe I need to sit back and look at it. Hang on a minute. He's still bloody Man City, and he's what price?
Yeah, it's a case of
6'8" or something. Is he?
A lot will have a defender. So I took the view just go attacking. A lot will have a defender. He's definitely better value than any of the defensive assets that you've got there. from Man City.
And yet I might still buy Phil Foden this week. I'd tell you where Martinelli's a headache for me a little bit, because in part of my structured plan I had, he was going to go in game week 8. Bless
We're talking about Arsenal.
Bless you, Suj. Martinelli was going to go in game week 8 when Arsenal played City, and the plan then was to buy Diaby. That's clear in terms of my plan. So you could just say, well, I'll bring that forward now. You've got Diaby walking into Chelsea away, Brighton at home. It's not terrible. I'm thinking, should I look at something else for a couple of weeks, really short term, something like Phil Foden as an example. And Bumo is a train that I'm not on. 2 brilliant fixtures coming up against Everton and Nottingham Forest. There's a lot of options that kind of underneath Martinelli that I may end up looking at for a couple of weeks. Or I just go with the original plan, bring it forward and go Diaby. Now, of course, if Martinelli's fit, then he's fit, no problem. But I think that's probably getting moved on, Suj. And there's nothing, by the way, if I went Martinelli to Diaby, I don't have quite enough to go João Pedro to Foden, to Alvarez, sorry.
Right.
If I went Chilwell to Botman, I don't have quite enough to go João Pedro
money
to Alvarez.
Money too tight to mention in a season where there's no assets. How you run out of money, mate?
Yeah, well, I've got 0 in the bank at the moment.
I've got
That's part of my problem.
in the bank at the moment, but I think having Alvarez does help.
The big call for me, and I mentioned obviously last week, and I've mentioned it a few times about the idea of potentially moving on Haaland in game week 8. You look at games like the weekend, you think, oh my God, because let's be honest, those who didn't captain Haaland at the weekend might feel like you lost. You've had a brilliant result. He missed more big chances than any player has in a Premier League game since Opta started recording this data.
How many did he have in the end? 4?
He had 5 big chances.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include the fact that he let Bernardo Silva's goal go in on the goal line, and he's onside.
Was he onside? Because they were talking in the commentary
that
Haaland thought he was offside.
Oh, you did the right thing, because if he doesn't know, he's got to...
Don't touch it.
Exactly.
Don't touch it.
But you could almost add that to the XG as well. So, yeah, he could have had an absolute mega haul at the weekend. And the more I look at it, I think, yeah, sure, Arsenal way game week 8, I want to take him on for the captaincy. But the alternatives in 8 particularly aren't unbelievable, such as Brighton and Liverpool play each other. Obviously, Arsenal play Manchester City. Alternatives aren't great. Villa at Wolves. Manchester United got Brentford at home. Tottenham at Luton's probably the one, but who wants to go down that route again if you went down the sunny route this weekend? There's already question marks on it. It's what I discussed on Friday about considering outcomes and how you may feel afterwards. And to be honest, the majority of people gone sunny will be quite happy to hold that and seek some more information. So if I've gone beyond 8 and then I've gone beyond Arsenal away, then how much do I really want to move him on? Like, I don't want to captain Haaland at Chelsea. Like, is that shit really scaring me at the moment and stuff? Manchester United away, is it really scaring me at the moment? Actually, no. The deeper and deeper I look at it, the more I think, yeah, rather than going no Haaland, this might be that the sacrifice for me is no Liverpool. And not getting to Salah. To get both in, it's just going to break too much shit for me, I think.
Mm.
And so I've probably flipped it on its head now. But despite Mo, what's he got, like 1 blank in 15 or 16 or so? I'm going to let it go, I think. And Haaland will stay. Now, doing it that way as well is going to save me more transfers in the sense that Haaland's already there, right? So it gives me more scope to fix other little things at the moment. And to be honest, people like Chilwell and Martinelli, they were both going to be on the chopping block in coming weeks for me anyway, particularly with Chelsea and their fixture turn coming up. So very open to what might happen transfer-wise for me this week. It could even yet be a role if these guys are fit, or I think Chilwell's coming back into the Chelsea team, or if I think João Pedro's going to start for Brighton. But equally, I could end up taking -4s or -8s, I think, this weekend, and just fix a few bits and say, right, this is the direction I'm going.
Okay.
And European games, as ever, need to pass first, I think.
I'm looking at...
if Watkins got injured Thursday night, I'm just buying bloody Alvarez, aren't I? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that solves a problem for you. I'm looking at 2 players as midfield potentials. Diaby being one that you mentioned. I mean, he's looking lively. But the way he took the disallowed goal, I thought tasty.
Which one? Diaby?
Diaby.
He had a goal disallowed?
He had a goal disallowed for offside. Over the top ball. The first touch with his left to just kind of dead it and then bullet in the bottom
match
corner.
of the day?
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't watch Match of the Day.
Oh, I was going to say, I was really drunk when I watched Match of the Day. Sorry.
But yeah, he took it beautifully. His finishing is fantastic. And the other is JWP. I think I want to get JWP in at some point as well. I could let it go this week against Liverpool, who don't have any defenders, but I'm tempted to get him as well. I probably will look at Martinelli to Diaby maybe this week if we get confirmation he's injured. Let Mitoma have Bournemouth, and then before he goes to Villa, they've got Villa, City. They've got a tough
Villa, Liverpool, City.
Then I might move Mitoma on and get JWP.
But then they've got a brilliant run again from Gameweek 10.
I can always go back there later, right?
I get that.
So I think that's what I'll probably do. And doing that will give me enough money to take Pedro out and put him up to a Nunez, who would be my preferred Liverpool striker. But I think there's still a bit of confusion around where to go there. I think there's loads of good options around and how to play it. So let's see. Let's talk about some of these games then, as we do each and every week, and where we're up to with all of them. Come on, we can start with Liverpool 1, Wolves 1, Liverpool 3, and Diaz dropped, rested, rotated.
I think
he wasn't dropped.
Gakpo
starting up top.
The assessment on this would just generally be, I think,
he's come back from
the South American players didn't play. Now, the caution on that would be, when the Liverpool play Everton in game week 9, Suj, in terms of the kick-off time.
That's a good
He's at a 12:30 as well on Saturday.
It is. Poor Klopp.
Yeah, so there you go. So, violin out. At least he's not got to do that awful, terrible, massive, long journey down to the Midlands this time. But yeah, there's got to be the cautiousness, isn't it? If you're looking at 9 and going Nunez, Diaz, well, what do we know with the 12:30, right? I don't know what Egypt's fixtures are that week, but that may even be worth checking as well from that perspective. And thinking 9, Mo Salah at home to Everton, yes, please, I get that. And this is what I mean about I might end up there with actually nothing.
Yeah.
So I went down Tottenham early and watched all of this. Well, I say I watched all of this. I missed the first 5-6 minutes or so. Wolves were by far the better team in the first half. They changed system quite a bit, so they went with more of a 4-1-4-1 with Mario Lemina playing as a kind of real out and out, and the 2-8s really pushed on to get at Liverpool. And on turnovers, they had Liverpool in loads of trouble. A new boy, Jean-Rickner Balligard, worth keeping an eye on, 5.0. Did you know that Pedro Neto, Suj, has made the most chances in the Premier League so far this season?
I didn't.
No. And you can probably bin that stat as well.
It can't be true.
It is.
He's created the most chances.
It is true.
Great.
17.
Great.
That's not bad, mate. You're going at more than 3 a game.
Yeah. It's decent, but then he's got no one up top to finish him off, has he?
Well, that's the problem. So, I mean, that Cunha moment at 1-0 where he's just completely mistimed his jump, hasn't he? Massively. But Jurgen Klopp deserves massive credit for what he did in this game, because Liverpool looked dead in the first half. I tweeted this at half-time because the problem obviously was with no Trent and no Virgil van Dijk. Like, the distribution from the back line was absolutely non-existent. And the sight of trying to move Joe Gomez from right back into midfield just looked mad awkward. Alexis McAllister got hooked at half-time and he essentially went to a front four, Suj. And Andy Robertson went back to being the Andy Robertson that's been a really good FPL asset over the last number of years. And he played like a proper out-and-out offensive left-back rather than having to sit there as kind of left-sided centre-back. And Liverpool just turned their intensity up massively and got a higher box of players to pin Wolves in. And they did really well to turn that. That's great in-game management from Klopp, because he probably would have let him shit, got this wrong first half. But then, the introduction of people like Diaz and Nunez, ironically, has obviously massively helped. So by the end, Liverpool deserved it because they just turned it up massively in the second half. And Salah got his returns again. He's a little bit unlucky. That's not 3 assists, by the way. Although, correctly, Harvey Elliott's shot is going wide. So obviously just the 2 assists.
Yep.
But his consistency is phenomenal. When I talk about the idea of I might not end up going there now, it's not that I think he's shit or he's not going to get returns. It's is it going to be worth it to chuck my team about and potentially lose Haaland? What I need is things to develop, like say something like Brennan Johnson at Tottenham. 5 point, oh my God, Brennan Johnson starting, right? That's a route to me to saving money, for example. And then it becomes easier. There are too many other players that I think I want, just a little bit too much to make it work and not put myself in a position where there's going to be weeks where I'm relying on like Cabores or Gustos and stuff like that. Like I don't want to end up going down that route. But definitely now heading into game week 6, now's the time to really begin to think about what the plan is. Now, for many of you, it would be, well, I'm wildcarding, and that's fine. But if you're intent on not doing so, which is like my plan at the moment, you need to start really thinking about Liverpool and what you're going to do for those 3 weeks. Everton at home, Forest at home, Luton away, 9 till 11. And then I think it's Brentford at home in 12. Like, how do you feel going without the likes of Mo for that period? My decision at the moment is that it might be completely without. Nunes, is obviously easy for me to get to, but I look at that again and I go, at 12:30, shit, isn't it?
It has been good as when he's come off the bench, though.
Yeah, you know my opinion on Nunes.
Starting to get to the point where is he forcing his way into the starting 11? That's my feeling on it. That's why I've mentioned Nunes as a striker.
But they can obviously use those players in different tactical ways. Obviously, Gakpo wants to come to the ball quite a lot, draws people out of position. Jota's a really good all-rounder. Like, he's much better in the air than people give him credit, etc. And he can play in any of the forward positions. Like, you almost want that, like, kind of clarity on something. Oh, this is, you know what I mean? Like, Kulusevski got injured for Tottenham. Oh, right, Brennan Johnson's going to play on the right, maybe at 5.9, for example. You want that sort of, something's happened to Jota, Gakpo, right? He's going to have to play Nunes here. And they're more tempting than they would have been as well because of the Europa games. You know that the first team is going to play in the Prem.
Yeah.
Whereas with others, there's way more debate about that. But I might end up just letting them all go. Van Dijk will be back, obviously, for the West Ham game. And therefore, by the way, you should, in my opinion, ignore what happened with Robertson. Purely because if they continue to do what they did in the second half with Robertson really pushing on, then in build-up of the back three, you're asking Van Dijk to play to the left of that, and he won't be comfortable with it at all. So I think a lot of Robertson's more defensive work is to make sure that that Van Dijk stays as the central of Liverpool's three in build-ups. I think it may be a one-off. He's on a lot of set pieces at the moment, and will be more so, obviously, with Trent unavailable. But I wouldn't be rushing to go down. Oh my God, Andy Robertson's back to Andy Robertson. Like, no. Right now, no.
Late goals in that game. More late goals in a lot of games this weekend, James, as you'll remember. But Aston Villa came back with some late goals to beat Crystal Palace 3-1. I thought Palace were doing all right in this game, but in the end, it ended up losing. Thoughts on the penalty?
It's Darren England's the referee, wasn't it? I like the fact that he got sent over to VAR and he stuck to his guns. Yeah. Even if that might be wrong, his opinion, because I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with it. So he obviously made his decision on what he thought he saw. He's got shown a replay and he's gone, no, actually, thanks very much, but I'm going to carry on. And I like that because the whole going over to the screen is wasting everybody's time 99
times out of 10, or 99 out of 100 if you want.
If he believes he wanted to stick with his decision, I'm okay with that. I think it's one where probably if it had not been given, VAR maybe don't recommend that he goes to the screen. I would presume, particularly they've obviously recommended that he looks at it, haven't given it. The more you look at it, the more you feel like it's not. But I understand it. It's not. The whole idea, isn't it, is right, if you've made a big error, like I think that's one where we could split the call and there'll be people going, yeah, I think it was, and there'll be others going, oh, I think it wasn't, for example. So it's annoying that Watkins isn't on the penalties, by the way, because he'd probably be the second highest scoring forward in the game, near enough, if he probably was. He's got 4 assists now. He's still not scored. And I'm being really, really consistent in I'm keeping him. I probably
8.5 or 8?
Watkins, 8, probably 7-9 by the weekend, probably. Right. I would imagine. His price will go, I think, this week. It's Chelsea away next, Brighton at home next. And I would say for him, those fixtures aren't as bad as they would maybe look on paper. Then Villa have this super run that's West Ham at Wolves away, West Ham at home, Luton at home. It's a really good run of fixtures. Forest away after that. Really good run of fixtures. And I'm just going to remain consistent and keep him, I think.
There's no reason to not. He did have chances and stuff. I think you're right keeping him.
If he'd scored once, he'd be the 4th highest scoring forward in the game at the moment. So I'm kind of happy. But I do think, that is my route to Alvarez. If I do want to go there, I can't, let's see how I feel after I watch Nottingham Forest tonight. I might be like, oh, jeez, I've got to do that.
Are you wanting Diaby?
Yeah, I do want Diaby, but I'm not in a rush to get Diaby this week. But it might be
You're going to wait till after the Brighton game?
No, like I said, my plan was Martinelli to Diaby in 8. That was part of my plan. So if Martinelli's out, do I just go, right, I'm going that now?
Get it done early.
Yeah, it could be.
There's no daisy chain that you'd prefer on the way across.
I think the most interesting aspects of this game was the role of the two fullbacks. Now, I thought Alex Moreno might well come straight back in for Aston Villa. He didn't. What obviously the injury to Carlos at centre-back has meant is obviously Matty Cash going into right-back. And because Villa have this real bias towards attacking down the left-hand side, I really thought that, Cash is going to have to play this really defensive right-back role like he did against Everton in game week 2. My God, how was he not scored in that game at the weekend? He had several really good chances in the first half. And him and Dean were both going really high. Now, I think part of that might well be based on how Palace play. And in terms of trying to push them and pen them in. And again, we've spoken about them missing people like Elise. And it's almost like if you can get round Eze quickly, you nullify a lot of their threat. And obviously Palace were missing Jefferson Lerma as well. What I think Villa did, and I'm not seeing a lot of the game, but it looks like it's looking at touch maps and stuff, is they were dropping Kamara at times into right-back position that would allow the fullbacks to push high. And it could be, because of some of the results they've had recently, such as Liverpool away in 4 and Newcastle opening day, that he might be beginning to experiment with a couple of alternatives, because he won't want Matty Cash playing as a defensive right-back like he did in game week 2. You don't want to restrict that.
No.
He's better going forward than he is defensively, right? And the same is true of the likes of Luca Dean, and I think you could probably throw Moreno into that as well. So it might be that he's looking at alternatives at the moment. Zaniolo played left wing rather than Leon Bailey quite often comes into these games, particularly for home games. He has come on and scored. Jacob Ramsey's really close to fitness, and I think that's the pivotal bit in terms of for Moreno. Even though he's not been on the pitch yet, he's the one I got my eye on the most in terms of Villa defensive asset in the forthcoming weeks. His ownership's like 0.1% or something, which it should be, right? Currently. What a major differential that could be in a couple of weeks. Matty Cash owners should still be really pleased, even though he played a deeper role, because it looks like Villa tried to manipulate something that meant he could be further forward. Odds on Edouard, Suj.
Yeah.
He's in the FPL team of the season so far.
I know. I'm sure you said he was rubbish on the diff show. I think you said Crystal Palace attacking are rubbish. Their attackers are rubbish by Eze.
Yeah, I stand by that. I mean, Eze's 6-3 now. I think he might even drop towards 6-2. And they themselves have some really good home games coming up. And again, we've mentioned about, and people will be thinking about, obviously, the João Pedro to Colton Morris move, particularly with Luton's 7 double coming up. João Pedro to Edouard might pay better.
They have a funny run of fixtures, don't they? Where it's
good,
it's never like a prolonged good or bad. Like you'd think Fulham at home is good, Man United away not so good, but Man United are just not in great shakes at the moment. And Palace are the type of team that if you're not on it can cause trouble. Then Forest good, Newcastle Spurs bad, Burnley Everton Luton good. And West Ham and Bournemouth you could chuck into that run. So they are hit and miss. But I just don't know who I would sell to go to a Palace player when there's just so many other options elsewhere that I just think about, to be honest with you.
So you wouldn't consider João Pedro to Edouard at all?
No, I'm looking at Nunez or another striker that I can get
but
to.
But that still needs some manipulation for money, and I realise you may have
I've
that
got
now.
the cash in the bank.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Fulham 1, Luton 0. Harry Wilson popping up with an assist. Oh, no, he wasn't. It was Willian.
I was going to wind you up and see if you'd notice if I said that you got an assist, but no. You've already done the silly gag.
No, James.
Can I just
Harry
say,
Wilson did nothing. But
can I just say that Harry Wilson's 3-pointer this week was better than most other FPL midfielders of interest?
Yeah, Fulham 1, Luton 0. Luton still sitting there with nothing. Well, just the 1 point right at the moment.
Yes, but something very different from Luton at the weekend. This was a change of system. So what we've commonly seen is 3-5-2 really, or some might define it as 3-3-3-1 or 3-1-4-2, but essentially it's been a back three, wing backs pretty high in terms of when Luton are being offensive, the 3 midfielders across the middle, and then obviously the 2 up front. What it did at Fulham at the weekend was a little bit different. I think what we may get now is a little bit like, say, with Brentford. We know, as per Newcastle at the weekend, we know Brentford are going to go into that sort of game and play a back five, right? Luton will still play a back five, and it will be more like a back five than a back three under this system, but very much moving into something that looked more like a 5-4-1. So Jacob Brown came in and should have scored, had an effort from a Kabore cross that hit the post in the first half. More like a 5-4-1 where he's moving back into the right side of midfield without a possession. And on the left-hand side, you had Chong going to the left-hand side and then Sambi Lokonga joining the Canberra in midfield. And you're then putting up 5-4-1, basically out of possession. Fulham had an absurd amount of ball in this game.
It's a joke.
The days when you're seeing Issa Diop topping like 150 passes and stuff.
My friend, I am sure... And please, any stats people, I am sure that Issa Diop completed more passes in this match than his entire West Ham career.
Yes, possible, yeah.
153 passes in this game. And maybe not, because he did end up playing. He's played a reasonable number of games for us. But that is ridiculous. 153 passes. Tim Ream next to him was 130 something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
140. That's 293 passes between them.
Fulham had 78% possession.
Yeah.
So,
how many passes did the entire team?
What we've got with Luton now is we've got an alternative formation, which I think they're going to use in games where they will be heavy underdogs. Now, what I think is, I don't think they'll play this against Wolves, who they've got next at home, because I think they'll go for it against Wolves. So I think we can, and it might be that it's Brown plays rather than Adebayo up front with Morris, but I think we can expect to see more, say, Barkley comes back in and the two wing-backs being higher and they're being solely responsible for the width, etc. Because all Luton had here in terms of width was Kabore from right wing-back, because Amari Bell played left wing-back. Burke's obviously back in the team now. So they've made a few changes in the centre-back / wing-back position. That's not helpful for those looking for their enablers for game week 7, because they've got a few to choose from now, right? You've got Burke, Bell, Kabore. Mads Anderson played again. He's the one I'd be most concerned about in terms of minutes, and yet he's the one most less engaged people will probably end up going with because he's the highest scoring out of them because he scored against West Ham. So I still think Kabore would be the one if you knew he'd play. Amari Bell, I think, under nearly all circumstances plays, and I think that'd be the same for Burke as well. Right-sided centre-back, so they might be better ways to go.
I'll be playing Kabore in game week 7.
Of course you will.
But
you should consider playing him this week. As long as you can deal with the amount of chances that Pedro Neto creates.
I've been hearing a lot of talk around Carlton Morrison, and I'm not getting it. For the double game week, of course, for game week 7. I'm just not getting...
Forwards, penalty taker, double against Everton, Burnley. It's obvious.
Playing for Luton. Gives me a problem to fix further down the road. I just don't see enough of an upside to justify the double fixture.
I can't see me buying Morris.
I'm not adding anything to Kabore, to be honest with you, from Burnley or...
I can see me... Here's the thing, Luton. And this is what I've looked at in my plans. If I go a Luton player defensively in the next couple of weeks, and Bell might... This might edge it for me. Bell might go to 3.9 before the week. If it's not before this week, it won't, because there'll be enough investment next week. But if he did drop to 3.9 this week, I might go there. Because if I go down that route, like I said, the awkward things, like if I go Botman, it can't get me to Alvarez and stuff, but also that 3.9 and then going, I'm going to pair that with Gusto. I've got 3, Estupinan, Saliba, Udogie. I go, right, okay, fine. Most weeks I'm going to play them. That opens up a route for me for Salah to go in with Haaland, potentially. So I won't rule out a Luton defensive player purely for that. It might not just be getting the Luton player, who I'd obviously play in 7 if I got them for the double, but even more about that might open up the difference of route that allows me to go Rashford to Salah, for example, in game week 9, if that's what I decide I want to do. I can't see me going near Carl Morris.
Nah, me neither.
Tell you the truth.
Me neither. I know a lot of people do want to get there. I can see the appeal,
of course,
on paper.
It's more enjoyable, isn't it? Get a doubler in, and it's good fixtures, right? Everton and Burnley.
If it depends on what you consider enjoyment, James. Because I don't consider looking at Carl Morris, a Luton forward in my team, enjoyable.
If Aaron tears up Burnley tonight, do we feel a bit differently about that again?
Well, would you rather go Aaron over Carl Morris? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying in terms of because of Burnley defensively.
No, I just don't. I just don't see it. I don't see it, but if people want to do it, let them do it.
For Fulham, Paulinho back, so good result. That's how it goes. Timothy Castagna in at left back.
Do you know what? I didn't even know he'd signed for them.
Well, you do now.
Until and when I saw him on, I think it was on the BPS or somewhere, I was like, oh, I didn't know he'd moved from Leicester to Fulham. Is he alone or did they buy him?
That's permanent.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty sure it's permanent, yeah.
Play.
William came in for Bobby Decordova-Reid as well. So I think probably the key takeaway from this would be Luton might have landed themselves in a second system now, but that system might not get used in the next two game weeks. I mean, that now, imagine if they do walk out these next three, Wolves at home, Everton away, Burnley at home with nothing. You're looking at game over, aren't you? I think, if they got nothing.
Man United won Brighton B team 3. You've got to be a bit embarrassed to lose to their B team. Not embarrassed, but it's a bit of a disappointment.
Do you know how much that Brighton starting 11 cost?
Yeah. Trust me, I spent more on my fucking lunch at the weekend than I did on
Sam only had about 3,000 likes for his tweet, didn't he? I heard though, Sam. I heard it was plagiarism. I heard about that. Yeah.
He added a few more extra players. Listen, regardless,
under 20 million that team cost.
Yeah, and obviously some of them have come through the youth system and whatever else. But decent result. I mean, I predicted 3-1. I think you predicted 2-1, didn't you?
Yeah,
one of the other early because
I did.
You didn't want to be bold enough to predict 3-1. But when you'd seen the starting lineup, you'd have probably felt more 2-1 than 3-1. But Solly March was rested because he had a bit of a doubt going into the game. So Dingra comes in. Evan Ferguson out. No Billy Gilmore in the midfield.
No Stupinan.
No Adam Webster at the back. Whether or not he would have played,
Van Heck might be first choice now anyway.
Would be debatable. But yeah, and Lamptey going from right back to left back. It's a good enough team. You've got Adam Lallana, who's like 40 years old or something.
Do you think if Roberto De Zerbi had been sitting in the Manchester United bench, what do you think the result would have been? This is the problem that people are beginning to have.
I would have said United would have won.
Yes, mate.
But if De Zerbi had time to coach that team and they were playing in this style of football.
We was asked this the weekend on our Patreon. I said if De Zerbi had 24 hours, he'd have won. Yeah, honestly.
I'm glad to have got rid of Rashford, if I'm honest with you. I mean, it's worked out this week where I've gotten away with it. But, I didn't need to see Rashford in my team for the upcoming weeks. Mitoma, Estupinan, Pedro. I've still got 3 there. Pedro's obviously come on and returned as well. I've got no real reason to want to move them on because any given week they're going to tear it up. Like this week against Bournemouth, I want to play all 3 of them, really.
Let's remember they got their first Europa game Thursday.
Yeah, it
is at home to AEK.
When I look at them in my squad, they're the ones that are most likely to make weight if I need to get Liverpool. But they're just so good. So I don't know if I necessarily need to force that.
Yeah, and again, it's a consciousness of remembering. This is where it's awkward because there's 2 sides to this. One is good fixture this week, and then there's a really difficult 3 games. I think that's fair to say. Villa away, Liverpool at home, Manchester City away is obviously a tough 3 fixtures. Villa have won, I think it's about 10 in a row at home now, I think. It's a brilliant home record. That includes beating Brighton last season. Liverpool, they obviously beat twice at home last season, including in the FA Cup 4th round, but it's a challenging game. City away obviously speaks for itself. Then from game week 10 again, look at them fixtures. Oh my God. And it's at a period where it's like, I'm focusing on Liverpool, I'm focusing on Villa, it might be focusing on West Ham even, for example. So I need to focus on going back to Brighton. So the closer I get to it, the more I feel like Mitoma and Estupinan hang around for me. João Pedro's expendable, particularly. Because they're just every single week, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And I'm looking at this week and I think, do I pick him over, say, Maddison? And just go with it. Right, it's Bournemouth at home, even if he gets the half out. But then I regretted that, didn't I? Was it game week 3 when I picked him over Gusto, didn't I? Well, I thought they'd do you over, and I was like, even if he gets half hour, I fancy them to do West Ham quite comfortably. And then there's also that other flip, and this is why I was so confident that Brighton would win at Manchester United. This fixture is better for Brighton than when they walk
No
into
block.
Fulham at home in game week 10, despite the possession Fulham had at the weekend, because you know Fulham are going to go, nah, sod that, let's shut this down. So, do the fixtures even matter with Brighton? How conscious do we need to be about the rotation? The fact that, Estupiñán's not even been involved this weekend, for example. For me, he's quite an easy keep, I think. Mitoma, less so. But whatever you've got this week anyway, so it's like one more week, isn't it? Or at least get beyond Thursday.
I'm not doing nothing beyond with Bournemouth for sure.
Get beyond Thursday and seek some more information. United played a diamond, basically, with McTominay and Eriksen either side of Casemiro and Fernandes behind a front two of Rashford and Højlund. You say you're pleased you got rid of Rashford. I mean, in that first half, I don't know, he hasn't returned, in fairness. It's worth saying United had, if you look at chances, particularly in the first half, United had some really good chances, and most of them went through
Didn't they
Marcus
against
Rashford.
you as well?
Yes, it's true.
And nothing's
It's
going
true.
in.
It's
This
true.
is like, at some point, it's like, okay, great.
These fixtures are really good for United coming up. Like, we've just looked at Son away to Burnley. That's where Marcus Rashford goes next. It's not a sell for me this week. No, for me, I need a little bit more information on particularly him. That, in terms of the diamond against Brighton, is probably a one-off. So we still don't have the information of probably what Ten Hag's plan is with the right-hand side, unless that is his plan. He's gone, sod it. I'm going to potentially look at going with a diamond and Rashford up front with Højlund. I don't hate it, but then there's a lot more onus. That will protect them better off the ball, but then there's a lot of onus on the fullbacks. Obviously, Sergio Reguilon played at left back, Dalot played at right back, and it's probably that. That's probably why Wan-Bissaka hasn't played, because I need the two fullbacks to be really offensive in that system. So I don't think we got the information on United we wanted. The fixtures coming up are really good. For Brighton, if you haven't seen all of the second goal, the Pascal Gross goal, you need to find it. Because if you're just seeing 20 seconds, that doesn't give you the full picture of how Brighton are. You need to see the whole 90 seconds that they kept the ball before they scored that goal. 30-plus passes, so absolutely taking the piss, mate. That was at 1-0. Brilliant. And you do that on a stage like Old Trafford as well. And I realise United aren't at peak at the moment. Absolutely brilliant. Van Heck, I've now really got my eyes on.
The Zerbi's been saying good things about him.
Yeah, I think he's very...
Has he gone up to 4.1 yet?
I think he is going to get rotated, it's worth saying. But I think he's first choice now, and he's 4.0. Now...
Yeah, the only problem is it blocks you off, doesn't it?
Well, the other problem is, there's that.
Because if you've got Estupiñán and you want one attacker,
for me,
what else are you going to do?
Yeah, but what if I said, if I go Chilwell to Botman, I can't go Pedro to Alvarez. Yeah, but if I go to Van Heck...
You can.
And then potentially that's a decent fixture this week. Then I can potentially go Pedro to... But I'd have to, wouldn't I? I would have to go Pedro to Alvarez.
You'd end up with Van Heck, Gusto, and Kabore, 3-4 million.
No, I wouldn't have all three.
Just
two.
two.
It'd be Estupiñán, Udogie and Saliba.
Yeah.
So, but I think at some point soon we've got to start looking at that and going, it's 4.0 for them. Now, they don't keep as many clean sheets as perhaps a side as good as them should do, but... I don't know. What would you rather have sitting there longer term? Van Heck or Kabore or Bayer? I don't know, mate. At some point, he keeps playing. We got to start thinking about it, I think. Like, he's one... For people who are wildcarding now, I think, look at that and consider it if you want to go down that route. Because you could as well. Particularly if you had a short-term plan with, say, Gusto, where you're like, right, I'm gonna wildcard. I'm gonna keep Gusto for, say, the next 3 and then move him on and leave a bit of money. Sure, why can't you go Van Heck, play him this week, Kabore, play him in 7, then Gusto in 8, and then work a rotation? Again, this sort of thing might make facilitating the Liverpool and Manchester City players you want at the same time a little bit easier in coming weeks. So we should keep an eye on that. And by the way, we should keep a big eye on Simon Adingra as well. I told you about him. I saw him pre-season. He's really good, Suj. He's 5.0.
It's all down to minutes for him, right?
Of course it is, but he's a
when
player.
Solly March is fit, whether or not he'll get the minutes, I wouldn't go near him.
And of course, the other aspect for Brighton as well is, as we saw towards the end of the game, and he probably should have scored, we've got Ansu Fati added to this as well now, just to muddy it further. As a Mitoma owner, pretty, considering the amount of goals they've scored.
Yeah, I mean, setting it on fire.
Well, what have they scored? 15? So averaging 3 a game. It's not, what has he got? A goal and assist or something? He's not got a lot, has he?
No. But you
I
never
think he's
know.
got a bit more than that. But yeah, if you just said, Brighton to get 15 goals in the first 5, I'd have been like, I'd arguably want Mitoma and March, for example. And that's part why many of us took the João Pedro option, I think.
Another late win at the Lane this weekend. So Tottenham 2, Sheffield United 1.
I'm loving Big Ange instead.
Indeed. I mean, I think if you look at it in the end, your XG was well over 2 versus theirs. And clearly you had the majority of the game and the stats and what have you. Unchanged lineup for Spurs. Medi going in on Sonny, playing through the middle. But it's Richarlison coming on that actually did the business in the end.
For Son captainers, it is what it is, right? And I would have, if I'd have been there and on him, I'd have taken that gamble and gone for it. Like I said, probably be relieved that Haaland didn't go off massively.
I couldn't do it in the end. I decided...
What, getting Son?
No, not captaining Haaland. Because it was a case of, if I'm going to watch West Ham Man City and there's every chance Haaland's going to score a hat-trick, to have to watch him score a hat-trick against my own team
and obliterate your FPL
and not have him as captain FPL, I couldn't do both. So I thought, fuck it, let's just stick with Haaland as captain, and that way I don't have to have that double pain when we play each other.
Let me talk about Sheffield United first, if I may, because otherwise I might get lost in the Tottenham stuff, and I think there's some important things to say. Firstly, I'm sorry to Wes Fodgenham for the abuse that he's received online.
Has he?
Yeah, there was racist abuse online, unfortunately, following the game. So, so-called Tottenham fans, and because he wasted about half hour during the game.
Oh, okay.
There's no excuse for why, right? But that's probably why he was targeted, unfortunately. And I'm sorry that happened. He, by the way, we joked in pre-season about League One Wes. I mean, he looks absolutely fine in goal to me, by the way. His distribution's okay. Doesn't give an aura of underconfidence or anything. Like, he seems fine in goal. That's not a huge problem for Sheffield United, in my opinion. He missed John Egan. I thought Jack Robinson of the back three particularly played quite well as the left-sided centre-back. Jayden Bogle obviously came in for George Baldock on the right-hand side. Luke Thomas came in for Larouci, left wing-back. Ollie McBurney was absolutely outstanding, Suj. He won everything in the air, and he will be a very big miss against Newcastle because he's obviously got himself sent off and suspended. I'm not particularly interested in the merits of should he got a second yellow card for dissent and stuff. I don't overly know what he did or he didn't say, but what I can say is it'll be a big miss for Sheffield United this week, and he's going to be absolutely crucial both for him and for his partner, Cameron Archer, as well, because Archer needs someone to do that work for him. We've mentioned it with Archer, there's like a little bit of Defoe in there. Like, if you give him a yard, you feel like he can do something, but I think he needs the battering ram to open stuff up for him. And Sheffield United are going to need the two of them fit. I'd be concerned about their likelihood of scoring against Newcastle without McBurney at the weekend. Not because McBurney scores loads, but McBurney will absorb pressure that also allows Archer to go off him, and it will allow, obviously, McAtee and Hammer or whoever's supporting from midfield to at least come up and follow up the play. Both Hammer's obviously scored a goal from a long throw, which is not the sort of place we should be conceding a goal from. McAtee had a decent effort in the first half as well, and it's come from backing up the play and supporting. Honestly, McBurney beat Van der Ven. I think the first time Van der Ven beat McBurney in the air was about 70th, 75th minute or something. Van der Ven is 6'4". McBurney won every ball that went into him. It was laughable. So he was really good up front. He'll be a big miss at the weekend. I think McAtee, for those who are looking at something and going, well, I don't want to end up with Haaland, Alvarez or Watkins, for example, McAtee might be where I decide to go, Suj, possibly, as a 4.4, although it might be argued that Elliot Anderson might get some more minutes now for Newcastle, who obviously plays Sheffield United this weekend, and I could even see myself maybe even starting if I had Anderson, for example. So McAtee, the fact that Heckingbottom said last week short of minutes and fitness, I think we'll get some bits. Overall, though, they're shit. I'm not gonna bullshit anyone. This is one of those games where, and I think teams who, from the Big Six and others who push near the top, will have been involved in these games over the years. And it's quite, if you don't get the early goal, it becomes like a slog. They defended really well. Full credit to them. They made life really difficult. A lot of the efforts we had in sort of the first 70 minutes or so were from range and stuff. but it was often the final pass or the final cross or something was just a little bit short. We played really well, basically, up to the penalty area for the first 3/4 of the match. They won't score enough goals, in my opinion, as it stands to stay up. I think if you look at the results they've had so far, they've obviously not been battered by anyone, and we should consider that for things like Gameweek 10, I think it is, for example, when Arsenal play Sheffield United at home. But if Arsenal score in the first 5-10 minutes, they'll wipe the floor with them. It'll be easy, yeah. If Man City scored in the first 5-10 minutes at Bramall Lane in Game Week 3, they'll wipe the floor with them. It's the same with my team at the weekend. That's not give Sheffield United any credit. It's just being realistic and honest about it. They're not terrible defensively. No one's managed to score against them early at the moment. They deserve credit for that. But a narrative of, I don't think they could get done over badly. Yeah, I think they could. And I think if we'd have scored early, we'd have got a lot. And that's how it goes sometimes. So
I don't think you can second guess like the decision of captaining Spurs players or buying Spurs.
What you have to certainly credit is in terms of their structure, defensive difficulty they gave us, all those things. Yeah, they're going to give some teams some headaches, and it might be that they go to Arsenal in Game Week 10, and if Arsenal don't score early, then it might just end up being 1-0, for example. Yeah, it could end up being like that. I think they melted when they saw that 12 minutes come up. It's almost like you've got to play another game. Yeah. I think the reason it happened, by the way, was in the first half, and I know this exactly because I went to the toilet because I'd had too much to drink before the game started. 33 minutes, Fodringham went down, and I went to the toilet. And at 36 minutes, the game still hadn't restarted, and I'm certainly back in my seat, etc. And it was only 3 minutes added in the first half. So going into when the board went up for half time, I thought it was going to be about 7-8 minutes,
right?
And it was only 3. And I think some strong words were probably had about the fact it was only 3. And that's why probably rather than getting 8 or 9 at the end, there was as much as there was. I will talk on our Patreon podcast Wednesday about how absolutely insane and mental that was when the winning goal went in. But to say I lost my shit, yeah, I lost my shit massively. And we deserve credit for keep going and not resorting just to pumping the ball in the box. I mean, the beauty of the winning goal is it's a properly good goal, right? Udogie senses the opportunity to win the ball back, and it's like he did what everybody in the crowd would have done. Don't think twice. Like, if you get beat, you get beat. Go and win it. And then Højbjerg, Perisic, Richarlison, 3 fringe players all end up with a good little link that plays in Kulusevski. When he hits it, I think it's wide, because I think, why is the goalkeeper not moving? And it becomes clear when you see replays. When it hit the net, Jesus, noise, mate. It's just limbs everywhere. Anyway, Kulusevski ended up in that position because of what Postecoglou did to change the game quite late on. And you can imagine what the reaction was in the ground. I mean, this is a really interesting thing. So Ten Hag got booed for taking Højlund off when they were losing at the weekend. I mean, admittedly, they were already 2-0 down and there was 20 minutes to go. There was obviously booing because they wanted Højlund to stay on the pitch. But I get it, right? It's his first game in the Premier League. You're going to do a lot of chasing around against Brighton. We don't know his fitness levels. I get it. I also get the frustration from United fans. But we're losing 1-0 at home to Sheffield United, and he takes the captain and the star forward off with 10 minutes to go. And there wasn't a murmur of disapproval, Suj. And that's not because Sonny was particularly bad. It was just, okay, this is why he's making this choice. Let's go with it. Let's do something. And he moves Kulusevski as part of it into an 8 position, essentially. So Johnson obviously went on the right wing. You might have seen him have a goal disallowed for offside, which was very Dele-esque in its take and its finish. So he moved into a more central area. I speculated in pre-season that this might be something we saw, but I think we're only going to see it in this sort of scenario where Tottenham are throwing the kitchen sink at someone. What is interesting is that he keeps playing 90s at the moment. And I know someone's going, he's Kulusevski. Listen, you've got Brennan Johnson breathing down his neck now. Going to be putting pressure on. Richarlison's confidence probably going to be up a little bit, having obviously come on and scored and assisted during the game. I thought Manor Solomon disappointed, to be honest. I think he's quite erratic. I don't think he'll start at Arsenal. But I don't necessarily think that means Son won't play through the middle. I think he could play.
Because Richarlison can play off the left as well. If you really wanted to. You don't think so?
No, if Richarlison plays...
Play Perisic there.
Yeah, I think that's one option. Or he might even just play Johnson out there, I think. Or, yes, Son to left and Richarlison up front.
Anyone that bought Spurs assets before this week knew you're walking into Arsenal and Liverpool afterwards. So I think people that are like, what do I do now?
That's an assumption, Suj. I tried to warn a lot, but that's an assumption.
True, but I think a lot you would have had thoughts like, okay, what am I going to do against Arsenal? And Liverpool at home, I'm less worried about, to be fair. I'll probably play both my Spurs assets in that game because it's a home fixture. But yeah, you would have known. I think I'm going to be playing Maddison and benching Udogie, depending on what happens with the European fixtures in the week.
Yeah, it's worth saying as well. I don't know, like, if with what I've got at the moment, if De Zerbi comes out on Friday and says after the European game, he says, yeah, I'm going to start João Pedro on Sunday, like, I don't want to play him. So what do I leave out? Is it Watkins at Chelsea or is it Maddison at Arsenal? Assuming I've sold Martinelli for something else. What am I going to do? Sell Martinelli for Diaby and then bench Diaby? Yeah,
it's a tricky one at the moment. Indeed.
And that's why I might end up with something different, like Phil Foden. But let's say I go with Phil Foden. I'm definitely not benching Phil Foden, for example.
Forest, so what is assuming he's going to play.
Under that circumstance, like, if he comes out and said, Pedro's starting Sunday, I play him, don't I, in that fixture?
Yeah, so you would bench Watkins.
One of Watkins or Maddison would have to go on the bench.
I would bench Watkins, but it's a tight call, I think, that one, for sure.
And to be honest, in terms of the all-in, because I would play I'd play Gusto over Chilwell this week as it stands. But it's going to be Gusto or Saliba, so I can't even tell. It's the all-in strategy. I'm damned both ways, right? I got a Villa attack against Chelsea defender or a Tottenham attack against Arsenal defender. So one way or the other, it's not going to work as an all-in strategy. So the fan bias might get involved there, and I might just go, right, I'll bench Maddison. If he goes off, I'm still happy.
So be it. You're happy.
Could be.
Yeah, you mentioned.
But I wouldn't advocate it generally. His record in away games is
decent.
Much better than home games. I don't know if there's anything in that. Didn't particularly come close to scoring on Saturday. Neither did Sonny, to be honest. But Maddison would be fine. Like, if you bought Maddison this week, like, don't knee-jerk that. Nah, definitely. No. And to be honest, if you bought Son, you shouldn't knee-jerk that either. Because, as you said, and yes, it is a bit of an assumption, but surely everybody knew that it was Arsenal way next. And I spoke about this a lot on Friday about considering outcomes. How do you feel now? Because if Son does go back on the left, that's nothing as an asset. Honestly, it's not. Tottenham will keep sharing the goals around as well, it's worth saying.
You mentioned Phil Foden there, who got hooked after about, I can't remember, 70 minutes or something like that he came off against West Ham.
Saving him for Forest, didn't he?
Well, he didn't play. He didn't play well. Like, he wasn't controlling the game or massively involved against West Ham. But West Ham did end up losing 3-1 in the end to Manchester City, despite taking the lead and going in at half-time 3-1. Very, 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 very mixed feelings about this, James. Very mixed feelings. Because if you listen back to some of the fan cams and stuff on YouTube, people coming out of the game, what the fans felt, it was like, it was a sense of, all right, take it on the chin. We got beaten by a better team today, but we played well and let's move on. I feel like West Ham could have won this, like 2-1, but equally could have lost this 5-1 because Areola made some amazing saves throughout the game. Haaland's had it cleared off the line and what have you. Man City had some amazing chances, yet we defended really well and we gave them a lot of trouble in midfield. And when we did get the ball, I'm blown away with that we had 32% possession. I was expecting it to be south of 20, but even when the first one we were at 30, I was like, this is crazy. And when we did get the ball,
was that another open top bus parade? Was it 32% possession?
I'm blown away. I'm like, how did we end up with the ball for 32% against Man City when the whole game plan was to dig in, and we've played an extra defensive-minded midfielder in Souček over Ben Rama that's an extra attacking midfielder. Man City will look at this and feel like they were in a game, like we made them work for the 3-1 in the end, and ultimately a few points in the second half that ended up being a problem. Firstly, conceding within 45 seconds. Sofal just letting Doku score a very similar goal to Chukwuemeka for Chelsea against us, where he came in and cut in on his right and put it in the far corner. Like, we shouldn't be letting him score goals like that.
Great, though.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. He's a live wire, and I think give him a couple more games to adapt to the Premier League. Doku looked decent.
I mean, I like that right at the start of the second half. You're right. It is really bad from your perspective.
It was bad timing.
But the directness as a new player, when you know quite often instruction is don't give it away for City. The directness and the technique on the finish is really good. Really good.
Then obviously we lost Alvarez 70 minutes to an injury, which which at the time he was about to bring off Souček to bring on Ben Rama and leave Alvarez in. He had to end up adjusting, take Alvarez off for Ben Rama and put Souček in Alvarez's role.
So he tried to go for it.
Souček, yeah, he did. He went with offensive changes. Ings came on, Ben Rama came on, Kudus came on. Was not going to help. And then Aged, who'd played Haaland pretty well. I mean, it's hard to play Haaland at the best of times. Mistimes his jump for the Bernardo Silva goal by like fucking 3 seconds. Had he just delayed his jump, he would have got it. He jumps too early. Ball goes over his head.
Ugly goal.
And you think, come on. Like, Aged is a great player. He makes one mistake, timing, and you're 2-1 down. And then you know from there what's going to happen. And the Haaland goal, by the end of it, we were dead on our feet. I just think we ran out of steam because we were running around so much. Fitness told in the last 10 minutes. And City go on and win it comfortably. But I think playing like that, I think all West Ham fans are coming away from it. Actually, you know, we're not going to play City every week. We're not going to play these every week.
That's the best news when you've just played them.
Oh, man, honestly, you don't have to play these again. But coming up against the majority of the rest of the league, if we play like that, we'll be in with a chance in most games. But yeah, City, I mean, Haaland has one cleared off the line. There was a ping-pong in the start of the game where Gvardiol had an attempt. Rodri had an attempt, cleared off the line again. Areola pulling off saves. Alvarez, fucking curling beauty that hits the side. There's the post near the corner. Could have gone in as well. They had chances galore. But so did West Ham. Antonio, one-on-one, where you're like, if Haaland had that same one-on-one, he would have buried it. Emerson pulls a save out of...
compare those two players.
No, I'm saying if Haaland was in Antonio's position on that one-on-one, you'd have said it was a goal, but it's Antonio, not Haaland, right? Chance was a good chance. Emerson pulled a save out of Ederson at the back there as well. There were enough chances from set pieces that we could have nicked another goal. They also could have scored another 4. And I think both teams will come out of it. Well, Man City will just be like, we were in a game today, let's take our 3 points and go. And West Ham will literally, you know what, we don't have to play these every week, but we're still in good shape. Going up to Anfield, if we play like we did against Anfield as well with their defensive issues, we'll score at Anfield, I feel. We'll definitely score. Whether or not we keep them at the other end is the question.
The West Ham player I'm most interested in at the moment is not in the team.
I'm only interested in James Ward-Prowse.
I think this is very close to knowing now what West Ham's best 11 is. I'm pretty sure 10 of them. And I don't think it involves Ben Rama anymore. I've said for a while this is really shifted into a 4-3-3. And this is assuming that Alvarez is fit and not injured going forward. That's Edson Alvarez, obviously. Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Paquetá now, that's sitting. Bowen, we know, is going to be in there. The back 4 and the goalkeeper now looks stable, I think, in terms of selection. The question mark is up front. Because Kudus is getting in here soon.
Yeah,
it's where and when, and I feel like the more the way you're beginning to set up and stuff, the more I'm beginning to wonder with Souček back available now if it might end up being for Antonio through the middle.
So he came on for Antonio. Well, I mean, they were making multiple changes at the same time. So who's coming on for who is a debate. But when he did,
he went up front.
No, Bowen went up top.
Right.
He straight away pushed Bowen up top, and Bowen was there, and he played on the right. And he didn't have the best 10 minutes, but then we were camped in for quite a lot of that 10 minutes. The one thing I did like with Kudus is that when he got the ball, his instinct was to dribble or run or pass, not to hoof it long. Like he's a footballer that wants to play football. He didn't hoof it away. I think Kudus could come in for Bowen. Bowen could push up top is what we did in the last 10-15 minutes.
So this makes Bowen more interesting, no?
But I'd still go to JWP.
It's a little bit, but it's a little bit like the Sonny thing, isn't it? Just by sheer virtue of putting him closer to goal.
Yeah, 100%. And he still looks decent and looks lively. I just like JWP because he's doing the same. And he's playing very differently to how he did for Southampton. Like he's playing a bit further forward. I think the best thing to come out of that game...
It was a very un-JWP goal, I will say that.
Yeah. The best thing to come out of the game from West Ham was that...
the final whistle?
If Man City don't come back next season with another... No. We played well. Like at the end of the day, you think of it, we lost 3-1. I'll take it all day long. I don't think any West Ham fans came out of that disappointed. They're coming back with more money for Paquetá next year if he doesn't get a gambling ban because he was good.
How was Nunes when he came on for City?
Rubbish.
Okay.
Honestly, rubbish, out of place.
Guardiola made a comment in the week, didn't he, about his first touch is not good enough.
He was rubbish. I didn't see anything from him that made me interested or excited. City were fine, right? City were what they were. Foden had a quiet game.
And what you saw, and I've, to be honest, not seen a lot of the game. I mentioned about going Foden potentially as short term for, say, Martinelli. Would you consider Doku?
Yeah.
For the 2 games?
Yeah.
Forest at home and Wolves away?
Yeah, I would. He's a live wire, mate. He's decent. I would. 100% I would. And Foden got hooked, right? And he didn't have any involvement.
I think that Grealish was out for a couple of weeks,
yeah. I think so as well. But yeah, decent enough. And Haaland obviously ends up popping up with his goal as well at the end. So.
And Gvardiol started is probably the final note on that. It does feel there's a bit of a versus with Aki going on at the moment. But I think as soon as we think something like that, it'll be Akanji comes back out the team for a little bit. City looked like, from the bits I saw, looked like we're moving the fullbacks in sides of Gvardiol and Walker, kind of a la what Tottenham do. Gvardiol and particularly Walker, obviously, especially. That's exactly what they did to you on the opening day.
But we didn't really play with much width.
City don't often do that. They normally build in a 3-2, but in the opening day last year, they built in a 2-3, and it looks like they tried to do the same against you at the weekend from the little bits I saw.
Yeah, it was decent from West Ham, I think, to be honest with you. It's decent from City. They obviously still will create chances and score goals and share them around. I'm happy with my 3 City attackers. I'll be playing Foden this week despite him getting. I don't see him not starting. He could just as easily return a 2-pointer next week as a 20-pointer at any given time. So Newcastle 1, Brentford 0. Should we talk about that game?
Yeah, I was drinking through all of it.
I saw bits of it. It just didn't get me that excited.
Can I be honest with you? After the way the Tottenham game ended, it could have been a Champions League final, and I'd have struggled to watch it. Honestly, I was basically the last person at the stadium, mate. They had to throw us out. It was still going on at that point, and went for Santori. I had no interest in the game whatsoever. It sounds like I didn't miss a classic.
I had it in the background, and literally I was looking at Brian and Boma. It was my only interest in the entire game because of owning him in another format in Sky. But it didn't feel that exciting at all, to be honest. The only thing is, obviously, look, Callum Wilson started up top.
Yeah.
And I've heard talk around this, like, who's going to play Champions League, who's going to play Premier League. Is it going to be Isak for the Champions League, Callum Wilson for the Premier League? If you think that's what's going to happen, he's definitely got to be one that you've got to consider, surely.
I think, to be honest, that's probably overthinking it. I think Isak played 150 minutes for Sweden, whereas Wilson played, 5 or 10 for England. And there's another game for Newcastle tomorrow night in the San Siro, which is massive for them. And I just think it's a case of that. I would think, yeah, sure, Isak plays on Tuesday, but then I don't see any reason why Isak then doesn't play Sheffield United and Callum Wilson then plays Man City in the Carabao Cup. Like, I think we'd be guessing. I could be right. Someone else could be right. I just think Isak, who has obviously had injury issues, let's say, obviously had a really slow start to his Newcastle spell because of injuries, is not a player that will want to lose. So it's just quite simple one. Does this majorly impact the team if you start with Callum Wilson instead? No, it doesn't. Not for a fixture like this. Then fine, play Wilson. Give Isak a little bit of a breather. He's just basically done the equivalent of not far off 2 full games for Sweden during the break. And they were qualifiers for Sweden. Important. They're not in a good position for qualifying. So they're big games in terms of mentally and both physically. So no, I'm not surprised. That's what I'd read into it. Similarly, Gordon moving to the right and Barnes playing on the left. Almiron had just pissed off and played for Paraguay, right? Zach, give us the information. Gordon, interesting. He's on 4 yellow cards, Suj.
So's Jackson, by the way, for Chelsea.
Oh my, how has he managed? 1 point Jackson. Yeah, and Anthony Gordon possibly would be a good buy, maybe 5.5. And I'd say if you need a 1 week, well, he can't be suspended for Sheffield United away, then fine, be my guest. But probably suspension incoming. The penalty is dubious.
Soft.
No, I'm not keen on it. That said, the Wilson goal that was disallowed should stand as well, as far as I'm concerned. I think it should have been a goal. It shouldn't have been a penalty. That's my take.
With Brentford's next 3 of 3 and then 4 out of the next 5 and so on. No thoughts on Mbomo as your Martinelli replacement potentially?
Of course, I'm looking at 2 weeks is maybe what I'm looking for. Everton at home, Forest away. Of course he's in contention.
He wasn't that involved though, to be honest with you.
It's Newcastle away. You've got limited expectations for that sort of fixture.
Have no expectations.
You'd be looking again, it's all about the 2 afterwards and further fixtures. Even United away might begin to look like a better fixture in game week 8 for him, for example. But throw a bit of caution. Now, Brentford will almost definitely go back to a back 4 for Everton at home, and then almost definitely for Forest away in 7 as well. Rico Henry, unfortunately, has picked up, we think it's probably quite a serious injury, and I'm gutted for him because I've said this 100 times over, I really like him as a player. That's a major, major problem for Brentford because his athleticism on the flank, he's big, right? Mm-hmm. So the way they'll get round it, most probably, is they'll move Aaron Hickey from right back to left back. They'll leave out one of the 3 centre-backs, almost definitely not Ethan Pinnock. It'll be Ben Mee or more likely Nathan Collins. They'll leave out against Everton, although Collins is a bit of a unit and there might be a physicality element considering what you do against Everton. Mads Rodslev will almost definitely play at right back. But I do wonder, I think ahead in terms of when Brentford want to go to a back 5 in some of the more difficult fixtures, could there be a consciousness and a fear about a lack of pace in the wing-backs, therefore? And then could we see Mbumo play right wing-back, for example, away to Manchester United in game week 8? I think that's a possibility, actually. And I don't think that's a problem for the next 2 at all. I think they go back to a 4-3-3. Kevin Sade will probably come back in the team, and Mbumo will go back on the right. And that's fine. But it maybe should be a consciousness of just trying to consider going forward in more difficult games how Brentford are going to get around this with no Henry, because it's kind of irreplaceable, to be totally honest, in terms of the way they play. I know they'll go Hickey that side. How much they want to play Roslev on the right, I'm not convinced. I'm sure that's what he'll do against Everton. He'll just play. But it's something to be conscious of, I think, moving forward.
Sunday, Bournemouth 0, Chelsea 0, riveting.
I really enjoyed this. I'm not joking.
I didn't watch it.
I think it was the first 0-0 of the season, I think. But it can't be right, surely.
I have no idea.
I think it might be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's only one goal on the whole of Sunday.
Do you know what? I really enjoyed this, and it's boring Sunday. There was only one goal across the 2 games. I enjoyed this game more than the Everton Arsenal game. I mean, the result probably speaks for itself there. No, I quite liked it. The last 20 minutes, I think both teams in their own way were going for it. I don't think it's... it kind of feels a bit doom and gloom for Chelsea at the moment, and I get it. They can perform much better than what they did yesterday. I think that there's a couple of important things. One is they do have a lot of injuries, and we should acknowledge that. And sympathy, obviously, because of what's been spent, is obviously in short supply. But it is right. They do have a lot of players injured at the moment, which includes, the new £115 million signing Moise Caicedo, for example, and his backup, the £56 million Romeo Lavia, right? So there's some expensive players unavailable for them at the moment. I get that. Also, I think it's really important to reflect on it honestly and say that the amount of times Chelsea's final pass, and every single one of them attacking players was culpable at one stage or another, all the way back to even Gallagher. The final pass has been better. They win this game, Suj. Yeah, final pass so often let them down. Bit of composure probably comes back to what I keep saying about the likes of Sterling. Like, I just see frustration coming. It's one of them, you're like, oh my Lord. I mean, Gallagher put Sterling in for a great chance in the first half, and he ends up nearly hitting it out for a throw-in. Like, score, mate. So when they did get in positions, they tended to snatch at chances, but more often, and particularly in the second half, some of the final passes, just like he's in and he can hit it first time. Oh, it's a fraction too hard and you've got to take a touch. Lack of composure at the real top end, got to be better. Thought Bournemouth defended really well. And I thought for Bournemouth it was quite an impressive performance as well, because in the first 20 minutes, Chelsea just looked like they were going to completely dominate the game in the way, to be honest, Tottenham had done there a few weeks earlier, certainly from a possession perspective and arguably even more so. Like Chelsea, in terms of their tempo control, are like pretty good. It's then going up a notch and taking it to a higher tempo and quickening things up. They tend to struggle with. Actually, to control the football match, they're fine from that perspective. It's then taking it up a level. Bournemouth didn't have much of a kick in the first 20 minutes, and the more the game went on, the more they got into it. And to be honest, the last 15 minutes, I was watching two teams trying to win a game of football, and I quite enjoyed it. So I think Bournemouth can be pretty happy with their point as well. You know, just drawn with Brentford, they've just drawn with Chelsea. Those are decent results. They've got 3 points on the board when they got none in the corresponding 5 fixtures last season. That's a decent start. They're doing okay. Kluivert was mad lively when he came on, and I know a lot of people were saying that on socials. I couldn't help thinking, one greedy bastard I see there. Like he's one of them, Suj. He gives you the impression he ain't going to pass it. And he did on a couple of occasions, don't get me wrong. But he's quite head down. But I think Solanke appreciated the link-up that he was giving him later in the game. Whether he'll come into the team or not, I don't know. It's probably a bit of a team ethic there in terms of all-round play that might be getting considered. It doesn't surprise me that Marcus Tavernier's come back in the team on the right-hand side of midfield. We thought if Bournemouth were going to have this lean into the left-hand side, which we've not seen pronounced so much yet, that someone that could be a bit more stable and come into central midfield areas would be the right fit on the right-hand side. I think that makes Tavernier a good fit. Historically, we saw last season as well, their results were much better when he played as well. This meant Utara played on the left. It might be that Utara, Kluivert, and even Sinisterra, who's coming on loan, might all be competing for one spot on the left-hand side, potentially, because I think Tavernier might lock that down on the right-hand side. They're worth keeping an eye on because they've got some real enabling assets and some good fixtures coming up. But other than Solanke, I don't know overly you'd want to get involved at the moment. Keep changing between Kelly and Senesi at left-sided centre-back, and also late in this game they moved Kelly to left-back and took Kirkes off. If you're on Kirkes, I think that's fine and was probably a longer-term play. But yeah, still watching brief on Bournemouth. On Chelsea and their assets, my general take is at the moment in the bus team I've got for seats, Gusto's in it and Chilwell's not. That comment about him not wanting his fullbacks to go forward, I thought was bizarre. From Pochettino because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to Chelsea fans on what they saw in pre-season.
Does he mean fullback versus wing-back?
No, because they've been playing a back four all the time.
Yeah, but Chilwell hasn't been the left-back. Colwell has been the left-back.
Chilwell's been the left winger, not left wing-back.
Exactly.
Been left
so
winger.
If he's playing Chilwell at left winger and he's saying, I don't want my fullbacks to go forward, then he's talking about Colwell. He's not talking about Chilwell,
now we've got
is he?
Chilwell competing with... No, Chilwell's competing with Mudryk, for example, now. And maybe Cole Palmer and then Sterling... Cole Palmer goes on the right.
So the issue is not that Chilwell can't get forward, because he won't play fullback. But the issue is he's just not going to play because he's got other wingers out there.
That's bigger. And while Reece James is out, I know that Gusto probably is going to play at right back.
So what's he going to say to Reece James when Reece James is back in the team? Don't go forward.
This is why it's a bit weird because
he's not going to say that to Reece James.
But if you're the thing is, right, this is what I get the frustration. I've told Chelsea fans this, that I thought it would take months for the implementation of what he wants with the team to show through, where I thought there would be confusion for quite a long time. But where I'm confused is I obviously know him very well from being at Tottenham. And if he had two midfielders like, say, Wanyama and Moussa Dembele sitting there in a 4-2-3-1, and let's not pretend that Chelsea don't have players that can play that position, the fullbacks could just go. And on one side, you'd have someone like an Eriksen on the left-hand side of midfield who could pop into the 10 position and join in. So, Chelsea have the personnel to do that. I thought one of the real bonuses for them yesterday was the performance of Ugochukwu in midfield. I thought it was really good, actually. That's a bonus because when they got him in, it was like, he's going to go straight back out on loan. He looks a good player to me. I think he held it together absolutely fine. His distribution wasn't flashy, was pretty straightforward. But the idea that they couldn't play with him and Gallagher or Fernandes as a 6 and let the fullbacks go at the moment, I don't get that. I don't get that. I can understand the want perhaps to play Levi Colwell at left back at the moment. He's a player we really like. Perhaps there's a little bit of protection for Thiago Silva there as part of that. Maybe that's the problem. He also said in one of his quotes, he said Thiago Silva was having a moan about Chelsea's lack of discipline towards the end of the game. It's probably him not wanting to get pulled out into fullback positions and stuff. He's still a brilliant defender. I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think there might be a little bit of overthink going on here from a Chelsea perspective at the moment, but Pochettino's trying to work shit out and he'll want a bit of time.
Last but not least, the Gooners went up to Goodison and came back with 1-0, which is what you predicted. I thought they'd beat them more comfortably, to be honest with you.
I was only predicting 2 goals for Sunday anyway, so it was no surprise to me.
If Martinelli's goal had was allowed earlier, then the game might have been quite different. One of them, again, where if you get ahead a little bit earlier, great. But I had it on in the background. I couldn't massively get engaged with it. I had someone come around my house to have a cup of tea, and we had it on in the background. But I didn't ever feel like Arsenal weren't going to win it. I just think they did the bare minimum bare minimum to basically win, and that was it.
No, I mean, to be honest, if you look at we could kind of, to be honest, put the bottom 4 in a bracket at the moment. And to be honest, that's the 3 promoted clubs and Everton. I think at the moment, till we see a little bit more with Wolves and Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, we'll probably put them just above that bracket at the moment. If you look at those 3 teams at the weekend, Everton, Luton and Sheffield United, I mean, between the 3 of them, did they get to 100% possession?
I know the answer's going to be no, because
it's got to be no, isn't it?
The question?
Well, it's got to be. What was Luton? 22. Sheffield United was 30.
I thought you'd worked this out, James.
It can't be. Did they even get to 80? What was Everton's? 26.
Yes.
And what? Luton was 22. So it's 48. I think Sheffield United was 30, I think.
So 78?
I might be being kind. Was it Sheffield United 30?
Sheffield United was 30.
Yeah. 78. I mean...
That's the
for all 3, Burnley might have more possession tonight than those 3 teams had at the weekend.
Not 78, maybe. You never know. Let's see.
Burnley will have a lot of the ball at Nottingham Forest tonight. I'm telling you. You're right there, mate.
Voice activated.
But also, when you reflect on the 3 games, despite all those possession numbers, Fulham didn't score till a similar period of Arsenal, and obviously Tottenham didn't score till after 5 o'clock, basically. Yeah. So again, you've seen that with all 3 teams. Who don't score early can become more of a slog. Yeah, absolutely. I thought Everton were really passive, but then it was partly working, right? Because after the Martinelli substitution and a disallowed goal, I think Arsenal got a little bit disjointed for a little bit of time, where Everton started to get a bit niggly about stuff. But I don't know. You've got this record that Arsenal taken 1 point there in their last 5 visits, and I'm fairly sure that didn't come from just Everton just putting up just a complete low block all game. Felt like there was no intensity off the ball. I was expecting things like, throw Beto into channels to go and really get in and after Gabriel and Saliba. And then, to be fair, even you get up the pitch and you win a throw in the final third, or just these little things just to break up the play and get up the pitch. So I was pretty disappointed with Everton, to be honest. That's definitely speaking from a Tottenham fan opinion as well. But I thought they could have done better. Maybe they can't do better. No, Arsenal were deserving winners. I think if Martinelli's out for a while, I think that's a miss. I think that's particularly a miss for Sunday's game against my team as well, because one of the things we've been discussing with Clayton was the idea of, say, if Porro would play against Arsenal, and I said that I thought that he probably would, because rather than thinking, maybe it'd be better if Emerson deals with Martinelli, the thinking would be, well, if we put Porro into right-sided 10 positions, like what's Martinelli or the left-sided 8, be it Havertz or Vieira, what are they going to do to counter that sort of thing? And if that's a little bit less pace on the breakaway, that's not a bad thing for Tottenham going into that game. I'm sure Arsenal will probably win on Sunday because they normally do. But it'd be a blow for Arsenal if he's unavailable. It's not that Trossard's not a good player. Of course he is, just a different type of player. Vieira did quite well again. And to be honest, he looks a better fit for Arsenal than Havertz at the moment. In terms of style, I think particularly in a game like this, I thought Havertz did it right when he came on, by the way. But particularly in a game like this, I think Gabriel owners can now feel safe. There's no reason to think that there's suddenly going to be a problem there, I don't think. Unless something's suddenly up to Zinchenko and he wants to change it. But we think Partey's going to be out probably till the next international break. So at least the next 2 or 3, you should be absolutely fine. And to be honest, you probably don't want to play him against Man City anyway. So it's probably only the next 2 that you're thinking about. You should be fine. Arsenal will play better this season and not win. But yeah, it's one of them. So I've always mentioned about kind of Palace, innit? Win and leave. That's kind of typical at Everton as well.
What's your thoughts on the goalkeeper situation? I have a goalkeeper problem with Onana. Like long term, I don't want him in there. It's not a problem I need to fix this week with Burnley away. I can just play Onana for that. But David Raya obviously coming in and taking over from Aaron Ramsdale. And Raya did fine. He did okay. He's at 4.8 million. Ramsdale's at 4.9 million.
You ain't going neither of them in FPL. You can't. No.
You don't think so?
I just think Ramsdale could be back in goal for the Tottenham game.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risk now, isn't it, really? What do you think? Do you think he's just giving Raya a chance, or do you think he's got intentions of long-term moving to that?
Interestingly, when Ramsdale took over from Leno, it was the same thing. It was first game after the first international break. So I'm not saying that Raya was not suddenly going to be Arsenal's first choice now. Maybe this was always the deal. Raya would come in for the Premier League games from here. Maybe Ramsdale will play Champions League. Maybe Raya will play in the Premier League. Maybe it'll be the other way around. Maybe Ramsdale will start on Wednesday and then start against Tottenham on Sunday. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I know in my mind who I think is the better goalkeeper. It's Raya. But I think as yet, it's to be confirmed, and I think he will prove it. Ramsdale's a little bit more punchier with his distribution, and that might sound daft, but in some of the more difficult games where perhaps teams come and press a little bit more, it might be under that circumstance that Arteta would prefer Ramsdale. That it's all be under distribution, and Raya's distribution is really good. What I mean by punchy is Ramsdale's really good actually at punching a ball into, say, a left-sided 8 and breaking through lines with fast passes. He's actually really good at it. And to be fair with Raya, we've not really seen from Brentford him have the opportunity to do that. Raya's more about kind of more long diagonals and direct, and he's very, very accurate. But it could be that. It could be that you go, right, shit, Tottenham are going to go and press on Sunday, Ramsdale for distribution. Like, I wouldn't be surprised about that, Suj. It could easily be the other way, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it just popped up on my thing as well. Mikel Arteta plays down, replacing Ramsdale with David Raya. It's going to be a bit of rotation there.
It might even be that it comes down to concentration as well. It might be that he deems, right, Raya's better at dealing with, say, back post set pieces than Ramsdale, because we know that's something that Everton really like. So there could be a number of reasons. Like most people you'd probably rather go to games and have a clear, identifiable number one, I think. It is different to other positions, but we should understand that football's evolving, and if this is how Mikel Arteta feels, then this is how he feels.
Indeed.
I certainly wouldn't go near neither for fantasy. Like, I don't know, you could.
No. One more game tonight, James. Forest, Burnley. We'll cover that off at some point in the week before the weekend somehow. I'm sure we'll squeeze it into a pod somewhere.
Sky,
as a discussion.
Wednesday,
I think we can cover it off then. Do you want to tell everybody what we've got to look forward to for the rest of the week? I've got X up. I'm looking to try and find some good questions, James, that we haven't covered off.
You do that.
I'm struggling though.
Look on Twitter, you might have more success. People's poll.
If I go on twitter.com or x.com/Planet FPL on the web browser, it brings me back. Planet FPL pod, I should say. It brings me back to like some really old tweets. It doesn't give me the latest tweets for some reason.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Okay.
Look, here we are on x.com/Planet FPL pod. Let me refresh it. This is great for the listeners. It's got your pinned tweet from November 2019.
Oh my God, that was the rant after the last time we
VAR,
played Sheffield United.
And then the next tweet is 2021.
That was a rant about a Sheffield United goal being disallowed against us, by the way.
And so for some reason, the web browser is showing me really old shit.
That's interesting.
I think they're trying to push everybody to the
I saw there was something last week where it was bugging out, where everybody's tweet was like January the 1st, 1970.
Really?
Yeah.
Twitter didn't exist then.
Maybe it did, and we just didn't know. Coming up this week, People's Poll Vote is open now, be open until 6, 7-ish, something like that. It's very much UCL themed, so Clayton's going to do the podcast for me tomorrow. You've got two choices. One is we'll go through our UCL fantasy drafts ahead of match day 1, or a look at the calendar for Premier League clubs and how the spacing works and who's got difficult or easy fixtures before and after European games. Kind of a longer-term look ahead at things like Liverpool playing Everton in 9 and Nottingham Forest in 10, and what's the impact of that sort of thing. So whichever one wins, that's your people's poll tomorrow. Whichever one loses, that's going on Patreon. Wednesday, Sky Fantasy Football. Thursday, Clash of Correspondences, Liverpool versus West Ham with Dan Lord and Chris Stone. Friday, we Ask James streams, probably going to be in the morning. Our podcast this week on Patreon include Q&A today. Tomorrow, the runner-up in the people's poll. Wednesday, Tottenham. I'm going to talk more about the absolute madness at the end of that game on Saturday. Thursday, Money and Football on the proposed 7-7 partners takeover of Everton Football Club.
It's confirmed, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Oh.
Bite your fingernails, Everton fans, because you don't necessarily want this. Spoiler. Friday will be our Game Week 6 preview show. Our advanced tier content includes, because the patrons keep asking for it, more Nico's choice. And also, despite the fact that I did it last week, I was so impressed with how Jurgen Klopp changed that game on Saturday. I'll be doing another piece on Liverpool and talking tactics, which is, because of what they had on the pitch, will, I think, be very much a one-off. But I just want to show what he changed. It was really good.
Nice. Lovely. Jubbly. I found a couple of questions, James, on X to finish off the show.
One.
Which are just light-hearted. First shout out to Arthur. She says, in what minute will Suj say that it's a good week to have a bad week? It's a good week to have a bad week. So we're talking about...
Did she not say that yet?
Approximately the amount of time into the pod that Spurs scored, 110 minutes. There you go.
We haven't scored yet. We're still losing.
Still losing right now, mate. So yeah, but it was a good week to have a bad week. Although I had an okay week, I think I'm treading water, so it's all good.
41 is a good score this week, by the looks of things.
It's all okay. And most importantly, let's give it out to Max FPL. With no limitations on bread, condiments, or filling, what would be your perfect sandwich?
No, what do you mean no limitations on bread?
Anything. You can go any bread. What bread would you go? Baguette? Just standard sliced white?
Depends,
I do like white bread, even though I know it's the worst for you with sugar and whatever else. I do like white bread over brown bread.
Then.
Nah. I do like just standard white bread or a nice panini. I need a combination of a meat and a cheese. I don't think you can just have one or the other, but you also need salad. And you need some kind of sauce that gives it some kind of moisture, so it's not too dry.
I'm gonna put it out there because it just come to me when we went to Villa in May, and our good friend Ricky Saunders drove us up. We stopped in a very nice cafe in Bedford, had a sausage and bacon baguette.
Breakfast baguette.
That'll do, mate.
Yeah, breakfast baguette's not bad, but I think I'm going to go with one of my favourites.
Nico turned away in absolute disgust at me there.
Yeah, well, Nico likes
no caviar, James.
Francesinhas, no, mate. And that's a different type of Spanish sandwich, Portuguese sandwich that will give you a heart attack and diabetes all in one. I'm going to go with... because it's, I've had emails from Ocado and that telling us to get me to buy a turkey for Christmas already and pre-order it. Turkey, cranberry and stuffing on white bread. Can't go wrong, mate.
Do you know what?
Christmas sandwich coming out.
Yesterday, we took the little man out. He was doing really well. Thanks for those who keep asking. We went out, took him out to Bouncy Castle place. Then we went out for a Sunday dinner. Waitress comes over and says, really sorry. No turkey. I'm like, who gives a fuck? If that's the one meat you haven't got, we're fine. Yeah.
Listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Planet FPL. We are back at you throughout the week. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, notification bell, leave us a review, whatever else you can do. And we'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Play it your way. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man-child.
Tidy.
My dad keeps saying to me, "You get everywhere, you do." That's all right. You're always on that bloody YouTube, aren't you?
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
What's he judging that against?
He's just sick of my face, I suppose.
Like, tell him to stop going on YouTube.
What's that? Yeah.
What's that? Or mute the channel.
Just tell him to unsubscribe.
Does he listen to the show?
Of course not. My mum does because she loves me.